everybody in the group has a position of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So is that something you want to expound on?
I would take that back to history. If you look at European history, it's all about the king, the ruler, possibly the lieutenants and the generals of that ruler, but it's all the king did, the queen did. In any particular little principality, it was the duke or the earl or the baron, and everybody else was ignored. They were just cannon fodder is what they're actually called. And whatever way you look at it, we're not a melting pot here. We are descended from European culture and European ideals and European values. And when you look at heroes today in the media, Donald Trump, you don't gotta like him, but he did it all on his own. Now, the fact that none of it is true has no bearing on what people think about it. We idolize these movie stars who don't really benefit anybody but themselves. We idolize industrialists and business people who are laying off thousands of people. But they're brilliant and they're smart because they made some shareholders money this quarter. And that is the culture we're dealing with. And everything else, all these other cultures that you point to that have more collective responses to community problems are marginalized at best, if not outright ignored, and in many cases destroyed. So that would be my answer to that.
So, Professor Manning, we have question one is, do you think there will be pushback from well-established activist leaders?
Absolutely. Can't wait. Yeah, that's my answer.
And how will you approach that then?
The leaders that are there, and I've dealt with this problem, and they want to see things stay the same. They're all about protecting the status quo. And it's not even necessarily that they think about the status quo. I got to keep my job. I have to pay my bills. And I've seen it happen that when somebody goes in there and presents an alternative that actually undermines the status quo attacks. But that's the thing. You have to build the support. You have to have, you need the community, you need people behind you. Okay? And that's not, again, the subject of a summer project. That it's something that takes time. And the thing is, there are people who are working for social change on the surface that are basically in support of the status quo. And they don't even understand that until you start undermining what they're doing. You start making them look bad. So the way you get around that is you have people in support of you that are actually doing things effectively, are finding, what's the word I'm looking for? You're providing good services to these people. And I've stated that in my actual research project. I'm trained as a public administrator. The idea is to be as effective as you can with the minimum of resources. But the resources that you do have to use are the people in the community, the leadership of the community, and you got to play everybody to make sure that you have the support you need when the attacks do come, because they're inevitable. So it's a long-term game of strategy. It's a long-term chess game. So,
Can I just ask you, are you a resident of Wilmington?
no, I know a few people there. One or two.
Okay, so the follow-up question is, what do you plan to tackle specifically doing to balance power asymmetries?
Leadership development. I'm not there to challenge the status quo myself. What I'm there is to help the people who are already working on projects become more effective at what they're doing. And I'm not going in there with the idea that I know better than you. I got a master's degree now. Do I have a master's degree yet? I'm not going in there to say, oh, I know, so I'm here to tell you how it is. I'm here to, I want to go in there and say, well, what are you working on? How can I help you? It's not about, well, like Patton said, you don't tell them how to do things, you tell them what to do, and you let them figure it out on their own. And when I can help, I provide that support. If I can't help, I'm gonna get you people to place phone calls, and because that'll be your subjects of expertise. I'll have them talk to you guys, or anybody else I can wrangle into it.
So that's kind of where I push back a little bit and think, you know, when we go to a buffet line, we have all kinds of food before us, both healthy and not so healthy. And sometimes we choose the healthy food, and sometimes we choose the not so healthy food. And we'll load up a plate or two of that. I know I do that personally. So from the perspective of we're going to just simply offer this leadership, in my mind, it's very akin to a buffet line. Here, take what you want. Fill your tummies up, right? But if they continue to pick the bad, the not so healthy approach, how do we reconcile that? How do we really get in there and reconcile and make change?
Okay. When you first go in there and say, this is what I plan on doing, everybody looks at you like you're crazy. Oh, we did that. We tried that. Didn't you hear about that stuff last summer, or 10 years ago, or 20 years ago? Okay, fine. You don't need everybody at first. What you do is you start with what you can get, and you help them. And, you know, as in anything else, some of them are going to be, hey, gee, this is great. I'm going to tell my friends. And some are going to say, well, it was all right. And they're never going to do anything with it. They'll never hear from you again, or you hear from them. Some of them are going to go out and badmouth you. But you're still going to have that group of people that are saying, they're saying, hey, this is great. How can we do more of this? Say, well, let's do more of it. And you continue. And after you've been there a while, and it's like building up anything else. After you've been there a while, the successes are there, they're obvious. They may not be great, but they're obvious. People can see what's going on. They can see what you're doing. Well, he can't be too bad. Look at what he's done for all those people. Maybe I'll go check that out. And there's no guarantee of life, or no guarantee of success in anything. So take your chances.
Well, I have one more question, and I'll give the floor to Professor Thomas. Can you, so I'm hearing a lot of generalizations, and I understand that, you know, obviously we're, you know, constrained in time. But can you provide a specific example from the training you developed? I've read your project, and so you have some very specific training materials. So is there an example that you could provide that would demonstrate one key aspect of what you generalized about today?
Well, the thing I worked hardest on in developing a curriculum was the idea of leadership training, and I used Joseph Campbell's model of the hero's journey as the basis for that. And the reason I chose that specifically, the hero's journey, is because when you think of hero, you think of someone who's performed some actions that benefit the community. And there was a reason for that. You know, you could train if you're not focusing on that specific basis, I mean, you can train, you can be responsible for training the next Hitler or the next Mussolini or the next Pol Pot. So specifically at the leadership development, the very first module that I developed is going to be the most important because it's developing on the idea of thinking outside of your own interest. Is that getting at the kind of answer you want? And that's the thing, the whole idea is getting outside of individual interests and into the idea of benefit for your community, or even if it's just your network. But as this thing continues on, or is able to continue, that network is going to expand. And that's the whole idea. You start with a small network and you build it until it's effective.
Oh, okay. In hearing and listening to you, and I know you pretty well, you've been through my classes, I think the one thing I didn't hear, and I know it's in you, but you didn't say it, the concept of conflict resolution and mediation. That's something, I've drilled in all my students. It's about a win-win solution and self-determination. Working with communities, they cannot own any program that you present to them unless they feel like they're part of the strategic planning, the ideas, and all the things that make the program work. If they feel you come in and you give them a program and you're telling them these are the steps that you have to take, if it works, they're happy. All you need is something to vulture, and they'll say, they don't own it. They say, well, I didn't do that, he brought it to me. I know you know that, and I know that's just something you miss saying, because that's what we've always talked about. How do we make or allow people to feel that they own the project, not just doing something that someone has brought into their community. And in community work, it has to be, people have to buy into it. And that's the same with mediation and everything else. They have to buy into the process through their own self-determination to come up with that win-win solution. So I'm just saying, how do we use the terms that we use in NCRP to work with all of your plans with your social community capital, social capital.
That's why I like the idea of community-based participatory research, because one of my plans is at the very outset of this thing, when I have the first, and I imagine, small group of people there, and I'm about to teach them about leadership development and social capital. I'm going to say, this is my plan. I'm going to build a community-based participatory research project that does a community assessment. And this is the first phase, and I need the help of everybody in here. So at the very outset, I intend to use those ideas from community-based participatory research to try and include everybody who gets involved in this grand scheme of, let's start a CBPR community assessment some years down the line. And the conflict resolution skills come in the other courses: interpersonal conflict, interpersonal communication skills, meeting skills, marketing and public relations, keeping a unified message. All that is part of conflict resolution.
And I just want to say, you might want to change some of your terminology from I to we. That makes people feel they're included. This is what we are going to do to build our community. It's not what I'm going to bring to you. Again, you want them to feel that they have ownership in it.
Can we ask questions generally, or are we in the paper process?
Yeah, well, go ahead. We're down to a couple of minutes left. Go ahead.
No, fine. Yeah.
Do you want like devil's advocate stuff? I mean,
What's that?
Do you want me to? I'd like to play a little bit of devil's advocate with the theory stuff.
Go ahead.
To kind of push on that. How is that possible? Because Pierre Bourdieu, I looked at that debate between Bourdieu and Putnam and Coleman, the other guy who does law.
Yeah, Coleman.
Right. So Coleman and Putnam say that it's just a matter of building. It's the optimistic view that people basically can build community and so forth, and that's going to work, and this will solve problems. But Bourdieu says, his idea is that it's all a rat race. Basically, it's all people. They're purposely pushing you out. Anyway, if you're not part of the club, you're out.
Right.
So that's his idea of force and force field, is that people are constantly pushed out from the center, or they're pushed out from participation and so forth. How do you reconcile that, given that, there's two different views, obviously the positive view, Coleman, Putnam, Giddens maybe too, from England, but on the Bourdieu side, you're pretty pessimistic, right?
You're right. And for Bourdieu, it seemed like the idea of social capital was that it was completely unearned. It was just there.
Right.
And my theory upon looking at from the, say the less well-off side of it is, okay, one of the ways they push you off is because there is, especially when you go into like administrative processes, meetings, there is a language, there is a culture, there are sets of procedures and customs and rules that if you're born into the right milieu, you're aware of that. You grow up with it. You understand it. And if you're born into the wrong milieu, you don't have any idea what that stuff is.
Right.
So what you need is a bridge to help you understand what those languages and customs and processes are. And they don't have to like you. But once you understand how things are working and you are able to affect those processes, whether it's, makes people happy or not, you are part of that process now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the idea, by giving the people those skills that they wouldn't ordinarily have. You actually inject them into the processes that are there. And that's why the system works so well now, because it takes a special kind of person to go in there and try and do that. But they're generally too concerned with what they're trying to accomplish to spread that knowledge around, pollinate it, so to speak, to get other people into the process. They're just trying to hold their own ground. So my idea is going in there as a neutral force who's saying, yeah, this is how you do that. This is how you get that done. You give them that knowledge, that information of custom and process, and they get to inject themselves into the system without, necessarily being invited or even wanted.
Well, then that relies particularly on nodes in the network, or mavens, like the idea of mavens, people being able to connect people, and people of goodwill that are willing to do that, right?
Yes.
So, but if it's all through, the question is, does it work or not, right? I mean, is it possible just by individuals that can happen, right?
Well, it's more, it's going after, mistaking a windmill for a dragon in a lot of ways, I would say.
Exactly.
So, there is a chance for failure. I'm aware of that, and it doesn't bother me, because one of the things I learned about from researching action research is you'll never be a failure if you study failure. So, it doesn't work the first time, the second iteration you make changes. The third iteration you make changes, and then one day you're dead, it doesn't matter.
Now, the project in Long Beach, for example, the Long Beach Port, Los Angeles Port project that we'll be having in the fall.
Yeah.
The fact you connect to the president's office, and then now they're wanting to meet, right?
Yeah.
That's the idea of that you pushing through the networks, the referral networks and so forth, is actively pushing through it.
Yeah.
But to what extent does it take a few, say it's collectivist, but is that really true? Because it's a few individuals, right? A minority of people, minorities of people, that are actually doing something, and then this whole system shifts overnight.
If you have someone that's willing to share that knowledge, then it does spread. If the opposite, if that's not true, it won't spread and things stay the same. I'm trying to share that knowledge.
No, it's working. And then we've got this Long Beach project, the port project. Looks like it's a good example. So,
Yeah, I have a little bit of experience with it.
yeah. Well,
Professor Manning.
Professor Mann?
Yeah. Just based on my experience with an activist group, a
Mhm.
local activist group, I've noticed that in a largely Hispanic community, they're very busy staying alive.
Yes.
And they are not involved in, concerns in the neighborhood. Because they're just so busy raising kids, going to work. But sometimes leaders emerge, like serendipity,
Mhm.
just by accident. So have you thought about that?